All right, good morning, good afternoon. My name is James Pease, and I'm proud to be doing a presentation today on integrated project delivery and specifically focused on a lean operating system, how to reduce waste and improve efficiency on your projects and get better output and a more collaborative environment with your teams. So I'd like to say welcome. Thank you for joining. Quick intro to myself. I've been a project manager and now a regional manager as working as an owner's representative for the last 15 years, primarily in healthcare development. So in the upper left, I worked on that project about 10 years ago, and it was a guaranteed maximum price project. We were significantly over budget. I think at the end of the day, we were very happy with the outcome. But it was really a fight and a struggle to get through the project. Then I moved over to the right-hand side. This is the first larger project that I was able to work on with integrated project delivery. And we finished the project about 3 months ahead of schedule and 14% under budget. Stayed friends with people at the end of the job, and it was like, wow, I really want to do that again. So right now I'm working in the lower left-hand corner. This is a hospital expansion where we have a full integrated project team up in Roseville. It's an OSHPD project, and we've pulled many months out of the schedule so far and significant millions of dollars out of the budget. So at the end of the day, I feel very fortunate to be involved in these types of projects and able to deliver work this way. So that's, I feel like a kid driving a big D8 dozer. That's actually my 7-year-old. And so that's what I feel like when I get to come into work. So I always like to start by framing the problem. Why do I think we should change the way we deliver projects? And so this is research done by the Construction Industry Institute in 2012. They surveyed 975 projects with an average value of 65 million. And the key numbers to look at, the bottom left-hand corner in the blue, the 28%, those are the percentage of projects that actually finish ahead of schedule and under budget. So only 28% of the projects that they measured finished ahead of schedule and under budget. And I think in my experience, what I like to look at more is this red circle in the middle, which is a measure of the reliability of the forecasting when we set up projects. So only 5% of projects finish within 3% of their original schedules and within 2.7% of their original budgets. So from a reliability point, even finishing significantly under budget and ahead of schedule might mean that you got lucky or you really didn't understand the project well. The point of all this being that we don't really have good outcomes for big projects. So I think there's a huge opportunity here. This is a McKinsey report that came out last year that construction accounts for 13% of the world's GDP. So it's a massive industry, and it's a massive employer as well. And based on their analysis of the productivity and the waste in projects, they project that you could do $1.6 trillion of additional improvements, which would meet about half of the world's infrastructure need if we could find a way to deliver projects more reliably and not have as much waste. So it's not that the money wouldn't be spent, we would just be able to deliver a whole lot more projects with that. So a case study, this has been in the news lately. This is a massive nuclear power plant in South Carolina, and Westinghouse is actually the contractor on the job, has declared bankruptcy, and 5,000 people in this area lost their jobs. And this is an area where there's not a lot of work for those people to go to. So the news reports a lot of people are being relocated. And so I think this is an example of a large, massively complex job, things that don't get delivered very often. And with a traditional kind of a design bid build or design assist type of delivery, these jobs are becoming, I would say, nearly impossible to complete. So obviously, I think some of the strategies, and many people think the strategies are to start to implement lean concepts. So from LCI, lean being a production management based approach to project delivery. It's really borrowing from Toyota and the world's best manufacturers and saying, why can't we use similar principles to implement that within the design and construction process? In integrated project delivery, I use the simple definition of the right people doing the right things at the right time for the right reasons. It's really about aligning people and projects so that everybody is working for a common goal. Also, I think focusing on these 5 big ideas. In the previous presentation, we talked about an industry-wide event held in Northern California in 2004, facilitated by Lean Project Consulting, to say, what things, if we focused on them, would drive better outcomes? And out of that, they came up with these 5 big ideas, and then had over 200 people from the industry sign kind of a charter or a manifesto. And what becomes clear is that traditional contracts and delivery structures do not do anything to increase relatedness, manage projects as a network of commitments, drive collaboration, optimize the whole, or tightly couple learning with action. They're really about transferring risk and kind of a CYA mentality. And that Nassim Taleb, an author, has a book on Anti-Fragile, which is talking about, we want to build project systems that when you stress them, they get stronger. And I think a traditional delivery projects, when they come under stress from budget or unresolved design issues or field coordination issues, they tend to fragment and blow up. And surely in my early experience as an owner's representative, I had many of those experiences. So when we looked at defining integrated project delivery, it really broke out into 3 parts. An aligned contract structure where you're aligning the owner, the architect, and the contractor, and then trying to pull in the major trades. A lean operating system. So once we have a contract, that doesn't actually guarantee that we get these outcomes. We have to really implement a new way of working. And even within those, if you don't build a culture and really build the people on your project teams, then you're not going to get the benefit of the aligned contract structure and an efficient operating system. Quick refresher from part 1, and there's a recording of this webinar if you missed it, available at leanipd.com. But we start with this 3-party agreement. Other folks use a poly-party or multi-party agreement where you could have up to 18 signatories. There's a new leadership structure managed by a joint group called the core group or the project management team, depending on which contract version you're using. The contract value is composed of the design and construction cost, instead of the owner holding a separate design contract from the construction contract and then being in the middle of it. And this is just an example in the lower right-hand corner of one project, what a risk reward structure looks like. So these teams put 100% of their profit at risk in exchange for a guarantee of their costs and a shared savings if the project performs well. And it's a joint shared savings. So the overall project has to do well. It doesn't matter the individual performance of each company. And lately, a statement that's been made that makes a lot of sense to me: the teams need to understand in this environment, it's the same dollar. It doesn't matter if a designer spends it, a trade partner, a contractor. Every dollar that gets spent on the project comes out of the same bucket. So the teams are really incentivized to look at this as with a holistic approach. So today I'm going to go deeper into a lean operating system. I'm going to hit some of the key points that we've found really work on our projects and make our decisions better, make our processes move more fluidly, and then also kind of some feedback loops that you build into the projects. So I've defined a lean operating system, and a lot of this is straight out of the the Toyota way. A lean operating system, it delivers customer value through streamlined processes, practicing continuous improvement. So I'm going to go down into each of these 3 points and give some strategies or tools that can be implemented for each of these. So quickly here, we're going to do a poll. This is a way to keep everyone engaged. Do you have a formal process for documenting why a project exists? So take a look at this poll on your screen. I'll keep it open for as the responses start to come in. About 60% voted. %. Okay. So it looks like a fairly broad range here. So some saying yes for all projects, yes for large projects. We don't have a formal process. So some of our learnings over the years have been where we had really big issues on projects. We did not have a clear understanding of why our project actually existed, which seems funny to say, but when we do a root cause analysis, so a big part of delivering a successful project is being super clear on what that project is and aligning all of the owner stakeholders with the designers and builders to make sure that everyone's on the same page. So we do this through validation and then implementing concepts of set-based design, A3 thinking, and choosing by advantages. All of these concepts are to make the decisions more durable and to better communicate to the team our conditions of satisfaction. So for validation, we have a much more formal process, and I think it's good to have a much more formal process on large projects. I think that there should be a simpler process for smaller projects, but there should always be some kind of documentation that lines out who the key stakeholders are. And what you're trying to do through a validation process, and this ideally will be done before you go to the board for funding, is to make sure that you can deliver the proposed program in quality. So that's what the project is, and the program being, how many in medical, how many exam rooms or patient rooms. In a refinery or biotech, it might be based on output or throughput. You need to align that with the schedule and budget that the design and construction team says that they can do the project for. And all of that needs to be supported by the project's business case. So all of these assets that we're building have some purpose, and that purpose needs to be able to support the cost and the budget that it takes to put it in place. So there's an old joke of a 3-legged stool that's scope, schedule, and budget, and you can pick any 2 of the 3. I think it's actually 4 things. That program and quality are separate, and a lot of projects, even if we maintain the quality, we start to lose program. So we value engineer out key revenue generating pieces of the project in order to deliver the job on budget. So while you're on budget, you're not on budget in relation to the original scope. So having a formal process and actually documenting this and getting people to put their signature on this, I think, is a hugely valuable thing to do. This can create a lot of internal discussion and very quickly expose when you do not have alignment within the owner organization. Different silos or departments or groups within the owner organization are often not on the same page about what a project needs to be. And if you don't line that out and get alignment in the very beginning, then that can create friction throughout the entire life of the project. And even if the team believes that they delivered right on schedule and on budget, the owner may still be unhappy with the ultimate result. Set-based design is a concept taken, I think Toyota does this very well, where we typically will design one solution. And when I say typically, like a design build approach, being to design a single solution and roll that out, get a price on it. In an owner's point of view, the price is usually too high. So you go back and you design something else. The price doesn't go down as much as you wanted. So set-based design is a concept of advancing multiple options with continuous cost feedback. So a lot of times this will happen in a building healthcare project will be, what type of structure should you use? Should you use braces, unbonded brace frame? Should you use a moment frame? Should you use base isolation? We can't necessarily make that decision until you've gone through and further laid out the columns, laid out the bracing, looked at what the schedule would be for the welding on a moment frame versus on a brace frame building, how those independent architectural features affect what program you're able to fit in the building. So set-based design, you'd invest a little bit more money up front to advance each of those options farther. And then you would eject options if they become unsustainable and it becomes clear that they're not a valid option. But you wait till the last responsible moment to actually select one. We also do this a lot with mechanical systems, whether we want to have a building have its own dedicated mechanical system, we want to pull off of a central plant, or we want to do some combination. A lot of times we have to move fairly far into design before we can make the right decision. As we do that, we use A3 thinking. So I've called this A3 thinking because it's not so much around, A3 is a size of paper. It's an 11 by 17 size of paper. What it's about is documenting all of the considerations for a decision or a direction or a process. This can be used many ways. What I wanted to highlight is the first step in this process is documenting the problem and getting alignment around the current state and what the targets are. So a lot of times we jump to coming up with a solution, but we don't get aligned on what the actual problem is. So this is more of a process of, like validation, of going through and getting alignment on what you're trying to solve, what your current state is, where you want to get to, and then doing an analysis of the root cause and implementing countermeasures or implementing a plan. And then we've had a lot of luck. We get all the key stakeholders to actually sign off on this. And if we're doing set-based design, we'll use an A3 format to show the 3 or 4 options that were studied with a selection, which option that we're recommending and why. So coupled with that, we're starting to use choosing by advantages. So this is a decision-making system created by Jim Sir. And so this is a way of decoupling the features that you're looking for in a decision. So in a mechanical system, it might be the size of the units, the capacity, the long-term energy usage, how long the equipment is good for, the annual maintenance costs, and decoupling those types of features from the initial cost. So a lot of times we get caught up on the initial cost and we can't really apply the right weight to the features that are important to us. And so once you come up with the features that you want, it's about ranking. So this example is, we're trying to decide on a project if we wanted to use design build, a GMP, or an integrated form of agreement. And so this is what we came up with as a team about the errors and omissions in this type of project, and it has to do with waterproofing. To make sure that it was done right we decided the most important thing. And then the census was to maintain operation of the existing building was the second most important thing. And we decided which of these systems, contract models, we thought would best align the team for that. And then this can be documented on an A3. So you can incorporate this with an A3. You've got your different options and maybe your set-based design options. You can document them on an A3, and then the actual selection process can be used through choosing by advantages. And I've shown in the lower left, there's a software system that we've been experimenting with called Paramount Decisions. And I think there's some good things about this because it can help to standardize the process, and you can generate a graph at the end which shows the advantages of a system versus the cost. So you can look at the cost per units of advantage, and that's another way of making a decision. We'll do another poll. Would like to know, how much time do you spend thinking about how you're going to deliver a project with your team? So if you've used those tools at the beginning to really document why a project exists, what the project is composed of, how much time do you spend to then select and plan how you're going to deliver that value? So you should have a poll up. Answers are starting to come in. Give it another 10 seconds here. Okay, this is great. So it looks like at least half of the group is spending a considerable amount of time up front. I think we're self-selected by an audience that would be interested in this topic as well. A small amount of time for each project, and then definitely sometimes for larger projects. Good to see nobody is just jumping in and starting to deliver it. I would say earlier in my career, it was more often that, we just always did design, bid, build. We always hired the teams in the same order. We always had the same way of bidding the projects. So we didn't actually spend a lot of time upfront planning. With integrated project delivery, we spend a tremendous amount of time up front thinking about what processes are we going to use, what contracts are we going to use, how are we going to structure the team. We look at Last Planner system. I think most people are probably familiar with this. I'll give a couple examples of how we typically implement it. Some kind of co-location or collaboration strategy. There's always talk about building information modeling, and I'm really going to focus on the process of building information modeling, not the exact model itself. And then you need to come up with a way of managing information. How are you going to collect it, share it, organize it? So the Last Planner system is made up of 5 connected conversations. So instead of starting a project with a 5,000 line item schedule and then contractually requiring the team to update that all the time, we're actually completely changing the way we do RFPs, and we'll ask for a schedule for a 3-year job. We'll just ask for, say, 10 milestones, 15 milestones. What are the major points, like start of structural steel? When do you start putting the skin on the building? When do you start production drywall? And then you go into more detailed phase planning, then make ready planning, which is your 4 to 6 week look ahead, weekly work planning. So we're trying to implement this on all projects. I think on smaller projects, people say that you don't need to use it. My argument is always, well, you should definitely use it then. The smaller the project, the easier it is to get alignment on a weekly work plan. And then learning is about building that feedback loop in. So just share some examples. This is an example of a $180 million project that has 14 permit packages and about 10 different scopes of remodels. So this is an example of what we would use as a high-level schedule. This is enough information to communicate what we need to know. And the way the contracts are structured, you're not tracking delays the way you would in a typical one. So I think there's a lot of waste in the traditional process of trying to update a massive CPM schedule. So phase planning, I think most of you are probably familiar with this. What I wanted to show here is that From the poll scheduling process, we still will put it into a CPM software. So this doesn't get rid of being able to use Primavera or Microsoft Project. So you can still do like a 3 or 6 month phase. You can get a poll plan together with all the parties and pull to one of those milestones that would be on the checklist. Like for us, it would be we're pulling to when we're going to submit for permit for this specific package. And then we'll build it in to a schedule, and we'll use that to do our look ahead planning. So this look ahead or make ready planning is about looking out 4 to 6 weeks. Sometimes I joke on an OSHPD job, a reasonable look ahead schedule might be 6 months, because if you need a major change that you just don't have the time to do that within OSHPD. So on the left-hand side is vPlanner. This is one way of actually inputting all of the tasks, and you can sort them by week or by responsible party or by area. It's a good way to look at it. If you don't have a system like that, I want to be clear that you can still do that within a regular Microsoft project. I think some people think it needs to be a really sophisticated system, and I really don't think that it needs to be, as long as you have buy-in on the team about how you're going to do it. This is one example of a weekly work plan. This is the old R plan, which got bought by Autodesk. But I like the layout of this. It's about every Thursday or Wednesday or Friday. I like to do Thursdays. You map out what everyone's going to do literally by day the following week, and you come back the following week, and the first thing you do is status this plan and see how everyone did. And I think most of you know, but if you don't, that based on the research that Glenn Ballard and Greg Howell had done, projects that are successful and tracking on schedule, believed to be on schedule with experienced people in the field, they looked at a ton of projects, and on average, a 1 week look ahead has an accuracy of 54%. So with this, if you implement this kind of very specific, actionable type of weekly planning, within 3 to 4 weeks, it's relatively easy to get a team up to 80% accuracy. So it's a massive productivity improvement just by being specific and following up on the weekly work plan. This is what that looks like. This is an example of a variance chart. So even if you're finishing 80% of planned tasks on the day you said you would every week, that means 20% are not. This is not a grade. It's not like you're getting a B- with an 80%. This is just a measure of your planning reliability. What's more important is, are there common reasons why things are not getting done? So are there design issues? Has the owner not provided information? Are there contractual issues? Are there submittal or material issues? So what you're doing here is you're looking for trends so that you can implement countermeasures. It's not to punish people, it's to actually help them and see if you can't make corrections on the fly. Co-location is a very big topic. This is an example of a very robust co-location project. So there's 7 trailers. This is the co-location facility for the project in Roseville. It's about 7,000 square feet. And I have a little floor plan on the next slide. This is the first project that I've personally actually worked on where all of the design is done in a co-located format. Almost all projects I've done before, or all projects I've done before, design was typically done with shorter charrettes where you got together and co-located, but then we co-located the trades during construction. This project, all the designers and the owner and the contractors are co-located. So I think there's 6 or 7 companies working out of here, and it's like a virtual company. In the lower left-hand corner, this is the big room. It's part of the trailer where we actually do a lot of the planning. There's a lot of whiteboards. There's milestones on the upper left-hand corner to show the key deliverables that we need to hit. And then this is just a work area in the lower right, giving you an idea more what an individual cubicle. We've got a big plotter. We've got a plan table. This is a really, really fun way to work. And it really becomes like one team as opposed to a bunch of companies fighting with each other, which was my experience on the big GMP project about 10 years ago. It was a war all the way to the end. So some of the primary features, we've got some very happy people in the upper left-hand photo. This is that big room. Definitely need to have Diet Coke or some kind of caffeine. We go through a lot of coffee in these trailers. But we have a lot of the concepts mapped out on the wall. We're trying to make it visual, what we're working on. This bottom left-hand corner here shows you, and I'll get my handy laser pointer here to show. So this is the big room in the back. So this area here is this room that you're looking at. We can fit probably 70 people in here. We have whiteboards along the wall. We have a big monitor. We have a bunch of information tagged on these. Then these are cubicles in this larger workspace, and we end up bouncing people around. Right now we have all the MEP and the framing designers and contractors working in this area, the owner and the contractor in this area, and the design is kind of along the back here. And then we have a number of breakout rooms of different sizes. They all have big screens in them, like this lower right-hand corner one. So there's areas for people to break out and have smaller meetings. This room here is actually this room up here. And then most importantly, we have a kitchen. This is where all the coffee is made, and some snacks. We don't provide lunch or anything like that, but there is snacks if people just need to grab a bite between meetings. So there's also temporary co-location. This is what I have more experience with on projects. So we're working on a contract for a project. This is a much smaller, it's a $3.5 million project. So we got all the designers and builders in a room for a half-day exercise where we mapped out kind of the key contract things. And what I wanted, the lower left, is this is actually us just mapping out with markers on the wall what our contract value is going to look like, what our incentive plan is going to look like. And so I've done a lot of design projects where you have a meeting like this, say all day, once every 2 weeks. You also will do a pull schedule maybe every couple of months. And then from that pull schedule, you can use a Microsoft project schedule even to manage design. And every week you can create a weekly work plan on a WebEx or any kind of conferencing software that people can call into. You can look at the model or specific design issues. So I think you can do a lot of stuff. It's about getting away from just emailing stuff over the fence. The more you can break that down, the better outcomes you're going to get. So within this process, we're using a lot of building information modeling. What I want to be clear about here is that BIM on itself, it doesn't really fix problems. It's a collaboration tool and it's a visualization tool. So ultimately, we're trying to get to a completely coordinated building where we can use the model to prefabricate, and we've got high certainty that all the systems will fit and that we can prefab them, we can minimize on-site labor. But the way that happens is with detailed tracking to make sure that the model is being populated in the right order. You need a strategy for primary systems. So how are you going to run your duct mains and your main plumbing, waste, and electrical? That can all be mapped out by hand on floor plans with colored pencils before you get in and start modeling. And I think where we run into trouble is where we model too fast without spending time really planning out what we want to do with the model, what outcomes and deliverables we want. So the lower left-hand corner is just really our lead BIM team working with everyone who's going to be in the model and coming up with strategies. And then the lower right, this is an example in vPlanner, but the actual modeling path for individual systems and population, I would highly recommend it actually gets mapped out and documented, and then this becomes part of your weekly work plan and design, and you track plan % complete on this stuff as well. So there's a lot of digital information strategies out there. I think most projects I'm seeing right now are using some kind of online cloud-based like Box or Dropbox. Here, I just wanted to show that the left side is, we have all of the information for the project. We actually, even the team uploads invoices through this system, and this is accessible to everybody. It's got schedules and floor plans. And on the right, this is all the current drawings. And then I have, we're using a system called FieldWire, which is a collaboration management, but coupled with a plan viewing capability so that you can tag tasks. So this is synced up to our box. So every time we drop new drawings into this box folder, then it's automatically updating, and that's going out to mobile. And we're using this as an inspection platform as well. So we can locate areas on the drawings where we want inspections, and that goes straight to the contractor who verifies it. Once they verify it, then it goes to the inspector of record. And this is allowing us to keep metrics on our inspections. And I think it's a big improvement. Oshpod jobs specifically have a tremendous amount of inspections. And you want to make sure at the end of the job that you're very clear what, if anything didn't pass, that you have a path to document it and come back and make sure that you get it. We're also using Bluebeam for markup. So we send the drawings out at different iterations. We collect all the comments in Bluebeam. I think one of our packages literally had 2,500 comments. I think the next challenge is to make sure that you have a good tracking system that all of those comments actually get resolved. So we don't want to be in a position where we say, well, we marked that up on the plans a year and a half ago. If it doesn't actually get coordinated and rolled into the permitted drawings, then the markup process is worthless. And BIM 360 Glue is the collaboration platform for the model files and the clash detection that we're using right now. But there are lots of systems with Solibri and Navisworks that are out there. I think it's more important to just get alignment by the team about what information are you going to have, who needs access to it, and how do you want to maintain and manage it. So not everything needs to be digital though. Along the top, these are the key project milestones from that initial schedule that I showed. This is a very easy way of making it clear to everyone on the team. These are the milestones that we need to hit. And in a very untechnical way, we actually just get up there and cross these things out and write the actual dates on them. And then the lower left and lower right, these are process maps. So along with the information where it's going to be stored, we've talked about what is the process flow of creating and distributing information. So I think there's huge value in doing this on projects and then just printing it out and posting it on the wall. If you don't have a permanent space, then this could become part of like regular meeting minutes or some way that this is consistently looked at by the team. So we're going to get a poll here before we come into our learning section. So how often do you stop and analyze how your team is performing and make adjustments based on what you've found? You should see the poll up now. Okay, give it another 15 seconds here. All right. So a good 67% of the group is doing this all the time. That big surprise is what I would recommend in talking to some associates. Ideally, when projects become self-aware, when they're actually aware of how they're operating and have feedback loops built in. So I'd say all the time is great, only at a couple of key milestones. That's very common within a lot of organizations, is that we hit, say, a permit set. Okay, right before we start construction, we check in and see how things are going. So I'm going to just talk here about a couple of strategies on how you can build those feedback loops in. The first being PDCA, plan, do, check, and adjust. There's a number of different verbs on this, on exactly what the A means. I use adjust. The concept of 5 whys, and then plus delta thinking. So plan, do, check, adjust. This is an example from a vPlanner. This is a metric tracking the reliability of our design process. So we've mapped out in vPlanner in this example exactly how we're going to do our design. And then every week it's did you do it? Yes or no? If not, why? The concept of plan, do, check, and adjust is about planning your activities, which I think we do really well. We pretty much, most of the time we do what we planned, but we rarely check, does the outcome that we got match what we expected it to get? And then to do a deep dive, which I'll talk about ways to do that, but we don't nearly as often build these feedback loops in. And I think these can be built into modeling, to communication, to contract discussions. So it's not just, PPC is just one example of being able to check. And then adjusting. So you get the root cause, you make an adjustment so that the next time you plan it, you expect a different outcome. Once you do it, you check it again. So this cycle is never done. It's an endless feedback loop of continuous improvement. So asking why 5 times, this is a concept. I think this probably comes from Toyota as well. The point being that we typically come to a determination of when there's a breakdown, we very quickly come to, well, I know what happened. So-and-so just didn't answer their email. But when we ask, well, why didn't they answer their email? Well, they didn't get the email. Well, why didn't they get the email? Well, because the file size was too large. Well, why was the file size too large? Because somebody tried to email a 20 megabyte attachment. So realistically, it's like we're trying to do something that we need to implement some kind of cloud-based or FTP. But if you stopped at the first why, you would just be saying that somebody's not performing and they didn't do their part. So 5 why is about this image of an iceberg. It's about looking beneath the surface and continually drilling down. Why did that happen? Okay, that's why. Why did that happen? Until you get to a root cause. And then if you make the correction at the root cause, then you will end, or at least significantly reduce the original problem. You'll actually build in a process of making things fundamentally better. So I think a lot of times we just like to stay up at that first level, blame somebody and move on. And it's really a discipline to continue to dig down and look at root causes. And the last piece of the continuous improvement is this plus delta thinking. So these are just some examples over the last couple of weeks from things that I've worked on, where a plus is something that went really well and should be continued. And a delta is something that we should change, something that maybe didn't work right. I've heard it described as, that's awesome and let's try. So this is it's not about something was wrong. It's like, next time we could do something and make this a little bit better. So we do this at the end of meetings. I find it pretty interesting. This was implemented on projects for many years before it came in-house to the actual owner's team, for the owner team to do plus deltas on their own internal staff meetings and training sessions. And since we've incorporated this same feedback loop into our meetings, the thought here is any one meeting, you're probably not going to fix everything. But if you do this consistently over weeks, months, and years, you will become so much more efficient by just routinely addressing issues. And it also shows vulnerability on the side of the leadership, that they're open to feedback and then to making changes. And the last piece I put on this is don't forget to follow up. What's important about this is if you do a plus delta, you write it on a whiteboard or you write it in your meeting minutes, and then you don't actually assign the deltas to somebody and you don't follow up if any changes were made, there's no point in doing a plus delta. So I think what works best on a plus delta is assign each of the deltas to someone, ideally to one person, but if it needs to be, it could be to a group of people. And then the next time you have that meeting, the first thing you do is have those champions report out on action that was taken from the previous meeting's deltas. So I think that's an often skipped, but that last 20% of the process is what makes it actually work. So in conclusion, we just want to highlight, so we talked about a lean operating system today. A lean operating system is one that delivers customer value. And to do that, you really need to make sure that you get alignment and you document what is value to the customer. And I think a lot of times teams assume they know what is value to the customer without actually asking the customer to declare what is value for them. So once you define that, creating streamlined processes and really making sure that your teams are working efficiently, that you take the latency out and keep like emails sitting in people's inboxes for weeks. So as many times as you can get people together, have them actually talk to each other, hold people accountable, will create much more efficient work processes. And then you need to have a continuous feedback loop built into that. You always need to be checking, like, how are we doing? How are we performing? And what can we do to make this work better? And this is a habit that you can develop. It takes work at first, and after a while, it just becomes standing operating procedure to check and adjust on everything that you do. So I'd like to hit one final poll. Did you get something today that you can implement immediately on one of your projects? That's the way I'm looking for. Is there something that you can take away from this? Another 10 seconds here. Okay, so excellent. That 60% of the group says yes, definitely, and 30%. So 90% of our attendees got something wonderful out of this. And if someone is doing all of these things already, then I think that is excellent. And I'm really happy that nobody said no, they don't think any of these concepts apply. I would just make a suggestion to the folks that they won't do it immediately, that don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Don't wait around to try to do the perfect implementation of Last Planner or a weekly work plan or a modeling process. Just start with a plus delta. Start with something knowing that it's not going to be perfect. And if you use plus delta and 5 whys with the plan, do, check, and adjust, then anything that you do now will be inherently better a month from now. So, don't wait forever. Just do something. So just in a sense of results, so these are $1.9 billion worth of healthcare projects in Northern California that have been delivered with these processes. And prior to taking this kind of approach to project delivery, this organization was hundreds of millions of dollars over budget on multiple projects, meaning billions of dollars over budget on the aggregate. These projects were all finished at a net 3% under budget. And there's another $3 billion that's in construction now that's tracking at about 4% under budget. The point there is this stuff really works. It takes energy. There's an inertia. I think projects tend towards chaos, and it takes effort to actually plan and organize and continually adjust. But if you do that, the results are there. So next steps, go out and make sure you're implementing a lean operating system on your project. This does not need to be, you do not need to have an integrated project delivery to do these things. You can do these things in lump sum agreements, time and material, guaranteed maximum price, design build. These are just processes to make teams work efficiently. They don't even need to be done on a construction project. They can be done internally within your own companies. I think you need to then create and sustain a collaborative culture. I don't mean to suggest that these things are sequential. They all need to run concurrently. You build your operating system. Part of that builds a culture. Building a culture drives a lean operating system. An aligned contract ideally supports a lean operating system and a collaborative culture. Then go out and finish your projects, share a beer. I think it's important to celebrate at the end and look back and pat each other on the back and really look at the work that's been completed, and then repeat and improve. So implement the same plan, do, check, and adjust from project to project, not just internally to each project. A quick plug for Lean IPD. So Lean IPD is primarily a website right now and offering webinars like this. We're looking to build out the series of webinars. So in the Q&A section, if there's topics that you would like to see on future webinars, it would be great to see. We're posting a lot of case studies and also growing out the blog. We're looking to focus this towards owners and their partners. And the reason for that is that we're finding to really drive change, the people that can most influence the way a project is delivered is the folks with the money. So if owners keep putting projects out to bid, then we're going to get traditional bid type of mentality. If owners start to require collaboration, then I believe that's a rising tide that will raise all ships and really improve outcomes in the overall industry. So some ways that you can keep up to date on this information, the next webinar, so part 3 of this integrated project delivery series, a collaborative culture. I think we'll probably wait until September to put this webinar out. A lot of people take summer vacations, June, July, and August. To make sure you stay up to date, go to leanipd.com and subscribe. We send out probably an email every week or every other week with new blog posts, new videos, new case studies. We try not to blow up your inbox, but this is a way of getting more information. Also active on Twitter and on LinkedIn. You can follow the company page for Lean IPD, and that's a good way to get updated. This is a screenshot of the current page. And one last piece, this is just a teaser. Been working with a number of integrated project delivery experts from different fields, from legal, research, design, construction, putting together what we're coining integrated project delivery, an action guide for leaders. So this is going to be a free PDF. It was funded by the Pankow Foundation and with matching grants from a number of companies that supported the research effort. And this will be free. If you subscribe at leanipd.com, I will make sure that you get notified when this comes out. I'm not 100% sure what the distribution method is going to be, but it's supposed to be released this month. So after 18 months of work on this, I'm really proud to see it come together. This is a draft of what the cover, and it's co-released by the Center for Innovation and Design in the Construction Industry and the Integrated Project Delivery Alliance in Canada. So keep an eye out for this. With that, I would like to say thank you. I'm going to open it up for questions, so you can find the Q&A tab, and I will stay on and answer as many questions as you have. And then also I have a request in the spirit of continuous improvement. Would you please let me know your plus deltas from this webinar? So just let me know with a plus sign if this is something that you really liked and that we should keep and repeat on future webinars. And if it's a delta, just let me know with a minus or a delta, and let me know what you would like to see improved from these webinars. And it could be anything from timing. We changed webinars so that we would have a call-in number for you. And so I'm hoping that that was a value add and worked for people, and a little bit different polling software. So with that, I will open it up for questions. So there's one question: would it be possible to tour a current IPD project in the big room? And if you want to reach out to me, I'm happy to work on setting up a tour of one of these facilities. So a question here: a lot of the lean processes are supplemented or enhanced by software. There can, however, amount to a lot of different and new software. From my experience, how many different software on average are used for different lean processes systems? Yeah, this is a very good point. We have kind of software overload on projects, and so it is very much about getting the right fit for the project. And I think doing the plus deltas is a big part of making sure that we're not implementing too many systems. So we'll be using some kind of, Microsoft project. On a big job, we'll be using vPlanner. Now we're always using some kind of plan viewer like FieldWire or PlanGrid. There's going to be some kind of cloud-based document management. For our big rooms, you actually need a calendaring system, which is, we actually run our own calendar for all of the conference rooms in the big room. And internally, we have a bunch of software systems as well. And I think there is a tendency to overload on software systems, which some of what I wanted to point out about, sometimes you should just print stuff out and hang it on the wall and have people just cross things out and status them on the wall. A lot of times that's going to get better collaboration and better alignment. So I'm not sure that's a good question, and there's not a hard answer for that question. On average, 5 to 10 systems on any project. So what are the smallest projects that we use Lean IPD on? The smallest project personally I've been involved with was 1.8 million. I want to be very clear that was a team that had done a number of projects before. It can take 6 to 18 months it took about 14 months to really get the culture right in this big room that I talked a fair amount today. So on a small project where design is 2 months or 3 months, you don't have that kind of time to get up to speed. So on the smaller projects, if it's a repeat group of companies that you work with, I have found it easy to say, okay, we're going to use this model. How much time do you need to put a number together? Okay, now that your number's done, we're just going to sign the contract and move forward. And had really good experience. For the first type of project, I think a $10 to $20 million construction cost if you don't have really experienced partners, I think that's a good place to start. Usually the job is long enough that you have some money in the budget to be a little less efficient up front and invest in training, culture, and team building. But also the job is not so big that if some things go wrong, you can't recover. So usually that means it's a 1 to 2 or 3 year job if you're in the OSHPD environment. and you can finish the job. You can do your post-mortem, your plus delta, and then go into the next job. I think it would be really challenging to do a $500 million job for the first IPD project unless you have a really experienced team. You need someone on the owner side and some major partners that have been through this a lot to coach the rest of the team through it. I would not want to start with a whole new team and make it up as I go on something that big. So a lot of plus deltas coming in. Thank you for that. Any other questions? One, for visual management, what were some of the other items on the walls you've felt or seen help the team focus and buy in to lean and integrated project delivery? So one of the biggest things I think is having just basic schedule and budget tracking metrics on the wall. Actually, instead of calling it a lean process, I've actually put target value delivery in the culture section. So because I think target value delivery is about really changing the way the team communicates and thinks about design and construction. And it's really about establishing a new way of thinking. So one of the ways we drive that is we break the budgets up into clusters or process improvement teams, and they have different names in different parts of the country and different countries as I'm learning through this IPD effort. So tracking those, what's the progress? We're looking at putting the amount of our inspections that get approved the first time. We've looked at putting seating charts up on the wall. So sometimes you walk into these big rooms, it's impossible to figure out who's who and what teams are sitting where. I find design renderings, site plans, floor plans on the wall. It makes it really easy when the team is talking to just say, oh, this is the area that I'm talking about, instead of trying to imagine. We have a project webcam that takes pictures every 5 or 10 minutes. Every time we have a meeting, we usually just put that up on the screen, on one of the screens in the background, because it gives everybody a really, really clear image of where we are in the process and that we're really underway, and it keeps it real. So those are some of the things that I think have really helped. We also, this job I think is a lot of fun. We have a staff recognition where monthly we vote on kind of who's really gone above and beyond. And so there's kind of a wall of fame on the wall for that. And I think that ways that you can highlight that culture is important. Team pictures from holidays or outings, I think, go a long way to just reminding everybody why they're there and what this thing is all about. So any other questions? All right. Well, with that, I'm looking through one last time. If I did not get to your question, or you have something that you think of later today or tomorrow, please email me at james@leanipd.com and I'll be happy to answer that. And I will get out a copy of these slides and a recording of the webinar within the next 24 hours or so if you want to watch it again. So with that, going to say thank you very much. Have a great day. And get out there and be successful on your projects.